all new. AM 1150 WTMP.com.
Okay, what do you think? Lined up? Live, Facebook. Join us, share and like, please. Share and like. There you do it, forever. Yeah. Perpetuity.
Alrighty. It's that time again, folks. And I know many of you guys have been waiting, and we aim to not do what everybody else keep doing. So, so this is that different show. This is the different folks
Live.
that you've been waiting for, and a lot of, like I having a conversation before the show, and a lot of guys girls and adults who listen to this show don't listen to some of the other shows, so you guys are special.
God bless you.
And I don't mean special like the short bus special.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you guys are special to us because it makes a difference when you have a audience and when you have comments and you have conversation, and anything that we may miss or forget or may just not know. You know, I am always aware that somebody's going to call in and fill in the gap. So thank you for being such loyal, intelligent listeners to this show. I'm Eddie Adams Jr., the host, Gable Phillips, the co-host, and
Live.
Tim the engineer, and we got a special guest for you today. So today's show is going to be a little different. I'm not going to rant and rave as much as I normally do, but I do got to say Happy Mother's Day for all those folks out there, and make folks aware that this will be the first year of my life in which my mother wasn't alive. So this is a special Mother's Day, and everybody keeps saying, you know, it'll go away and it'll get better, and time will change all that stuff. But you know, it don't. None of that stuff works for now.
Right.
So
That's true.
So it's fresh, and like anybody knows from any injury, you know, the fresher it is, and my mom just passed on April 1st. So it's not that long ago, and everything is still raw, as they say. So anyway, welcome to Porch Talk Radio. We're gonna do what we normally do. We got a great guest for you today. We're gonna cover some topics. We're gonna bring some stuff up. We're gonna educate. We're gonna do some stuff and say some stuff that I know will make the community better. We're gonna give you some information, and again, we're gonna do what we normally do. So if you want to call in during the show, the call-in number here at WTMP is 813-251-9867. 813-251-9867. If you want to call me after the show or during the week and have some conversation or bring something to my knowledge or enlightenment that I did not know, or just something you want to clear your heart about or something, you can call me. I'm good. I got good ears. You know, they've always said that. So that's maybe why we've been around for 10 years doing this thing. So anyway, you can call me on my cell phone. Eddie Adams Jr. cell phone number is 813-312. You can text me, and if you need to email me, which some people do occasionally, my email is Eddie, EDDIE, at Porch Talk Radio, just like it sounds, porchtalkradio.com. All right, first thing I got to do, and Facebook Live, you guys too, we getting better at this. Last week, our guest on the show, and he spent the hour with us, was the newly elected Tampa City Councilman Orlando Gould. I gotta give a big shout out, well-deserved, well-earned, very good community public servant, and being in that top slot there, being the chairman of the Tampa City Council. And we've had chairmans in all the county, the city, you know, the state, the school board, the whole thing. But hopefully we learned from past examples, and that we as a community don't just look at Orlando to be able to do all this stuff by himself. Because I'm going to tell you, and this is the way it is in Tampa Bay, we got one black up there. And in order for him to do anything, he got to get help. He got to get folks to work with him, and he need you to work with him. So if you want to influence the other people that is in the decision-making process, when there's some issue that Orlando needs to bring before the city council, you need to show up. You need to be you need to be the backup. Again, if they look out there, and I'm gonna tell you the nature. I'm gonna tell you the nature of white folks, not because I know what the nature of white folks from what I've seen and what I've learned. If they look out there and see a whole bunch of black folks, they think it's something up. I'm just telling you, that's the nature. They're gonna want to know what problem they need to solve, or what's up, what's got y'all upset, because they're not used to looking out there in the audience and seeing a bunch of black folks, and you stand out. I tell folks I've been to conventions, I've been to places, and when you're on the podium speaking, and there's 1,000 folks in the room, if it's 3 blacks in the room, I can see you. Not that I'm looking, it's just I see you. You stand out in a sea of white. So again, it's the nature of the beast, and take it and wear it. And when some community issues come up, make sure you ain't just sitting back hollering and screaming at Orlando, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that? Holler and scream and point to the community around you, because that's how Orlando Goose is going to be able to make anything happen in Tampa.
That's right.
The community. It ain't just him. He may be the figurehead. He may be that person up there. He may be able to get you on the get your agenda, get you on his agenda. But at the end of the day, before he can get anything passed, it take a vote, and he only got one. So just making that point. So with us today is a good friend of mine, another good friend of mine, and I've had the pleasure of knowing this guy since way back in the hard days, as they say, the hard days. You know, back when the Tea Party first got started, when I first got into politics, this gentleman was there. He's a part of the process, and he is now the Hillsborough County State Committee man, because they have a Republican committee man and a Republican committee woman. So he is our representative to the Republican Party of Florida. His name is Tom Gaines. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks, Gabriel. This is awesome. Always enjoy being with you guys.
Yeah, and before he started and say all the stuff he had prepared,
You got a lot.
he was prepared to say.
That's small print, 200 pages.
I am also chairman of the Temple Terrace Republican Club, and Tom, was our guest and was our speaker here last Thursday, and I want him to tell you guys something very important, because a large number of black folks in our audience have been listening to the mainstream media, and they keep saying, oh, DC needs to be a city, and they keep telling you guys that DC is not a state. DC is a city. It should be a state, and the reason it's not a state is because the forefathers knew and understood that way back in there when they was putting all this stuff together. And Tom can tell you guys, because I heard him explain it, the other night. Take a minute or two and explain to black folks, because a lot of folks say, well, black. Oh, they won't do this because you're black. They don't do that. Black folks had nothing to do with why Washington D.C. should not be a state. It should stay the District of Columbia. A lot of thought went into that process. And Tom, if you could, just I know you're gonna give us some other stuff, but tell folks that.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, you go back in history. I mean, one of the great things that we were provided to guide us were the Federalist Papers. And the Federalist Papers were the way that our leaders at the time, our founders, communicated to people through newspapers, telling them why our construction of the Constitution was going to be the way it was. In Article 43 of the Federalist Papers, Madison lays out why it was important for us to have a district separate from the states, back in the day, and we all know this, back in the day, or most of us should know, and if not, I hope it's something you learn today, and that is, people consider themselves Virginians, or New Yorkers, or from Massachusetts, or New Jerseyan, or South Carolinian. The fact is, America was not a concept in terms of its vernacular. People didn't call themselves Americans. That really didn't originate or complete itself until after the Civil War. But before that, and during our founding, through the Articles of Confederation and Constitution, we were Virginians or New Yorkers. What ended up happening, the capital of the United States at the time was New York City. And the reason they wanted to move it, because they understood the power structure between these states had to be balanced. And the only way to balance it was to remove the seat of power from a state and place it in a district. And so Virginia gave up 10 square miles of territory, and they made it a District of Columbia. And that became the designated capital. And the reason that's important is so that everyone else in the process has an equal state, has an equal standing when they go to the federal government for redress. Imagine if Washington, D.C. were a state. Think about it. In 1980, 7 of the top 10 wealthiest counties in the United States were those surrounding New York City and those surrounding San Francisco. Today, New York City and San Francisco, today the 7 of the top 10 wealthiest counties in the United States are those surrounding Washington, D.C. Here's the scary part. This is the way to understand it. Los Alamos in New Mexico is one of the 10 wealthiest counties in America. It has only one industry, and that's federal government. That's research lab, federal government. I think it's important for us all to know, because most of us are average folks. Empowering the people of D.C., and it's not the residents of D.C. you're empowering, it's the government in D.C. you'll be empowering if you do this. And it's taking power away from us as Floridians or Louisianans or Texans or Idahoans.
All right. See, so it's not what NBC, CNN,
LSD, MSN,
ABC, all those folks keep telling you. See, they use information to their benefit. And it's up to us to be smart enough to know and understand what issues will work for us and what issues they're using us to work the system against someone else. You see what I'm saying? And that's important.
Eddie, one other point, and this is, we all want to see that the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans come together on one issue. It's always important for us to see bipartisanship. Well, this was the original bipartisan issue, because Federalists and anti-Federalists together agreed that this was important. Both sides of the equation thought it was the right thing to do then, and it's more important today than it was then, because Washington, D.C. is so absurdly powerful, it'll become an oligarchy.
Well, now, guys, also just thinking back to, as you're saying, Eddie, about being used.
Right.
This is like reparations. This is the talk of reparations in a different angle, saying, hey, let's make this, and it's because the mayor is black and she's wackier than crap. But anyway, of D.C. right now, it's saying just because of the color, this must be changed. And folks, again, the objective is smoke and mirrors. They're trying to hide something else. Once the balance of power is affected, you know how quick politicians undo it? Never. And it'll always be slanted. And all of those of you people listening and say it's always the rich getting richer with D.C. becoming a state. Now it's the richest running your life because they don't know squat about your life. So again, this is a game, and you're being played.
Gabriel, let's go back to the numbers, and this is the numbers that matter. If what we're talking about is the average citizen of Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, and they are African American, what could benefit them most? What benefits them the most, as I said earlier, is the social economic reality is that area is the most expensive place in the country. Now, if that were the case, and it is, why aren't the conditions better for African Americans in Washington, D.C.? Because the powers that be in Washington, D.C. do not want them to be part of that power structure. And think about this. President Obama removed the ability for Washington, D.C. to have private education vouchers, which is what Florida has been really successful about our education.
Well, there's power
Expansion.
keeping the dumb people dumb.
That's the key. And the dilapidated schools in Washington, D.C. are because of the local government's failure to deliver on resources.
But wait a minute, no, wait a minute. Now we're getting in trouble here because now I know that that's been Democrat run for how long?
About 70 years.
So they own that. The
They-
bad schools, the crappy schools, keeping the dumb dumber, they own it flat out.
The
Like
funny thing is,
Chicago,
that's
Detroit,
real.
New Jersey.
That's real Jim Crow. That is
Ooh.
real. The vestiges of Jim Crow, just look, when you cross the bridge into Washington, D.C. from Alexandria, you see the dilapidation of the schools. That is the institutional racism we have today, and that's in education.
So, you say institutional, like systemic racism, Bailey.
Systemic racism.
So it really does exist.
Correct.
And what's really, I think, foolish, I'm using a very nice word, foolish, is that the ones who complain the most about systemic racism keep putting the ones back into power to keep it alive.
That is correct.
That's
And-
insane.
And think about this. When was the last time we talked about the plight of education in our major inner cities?
Detroit,
Detroit,
Chicago.
Baltimore.
Wow,
Philly.
Democrats own that fully.
Sure.
Their programs have failed for decades.
All right, we got a caller. Caller, welcome to Porch Talk Radio on this fine Saturday afternoon. Who are you? Where are you calling from? And what say you? Hello?
Hi, Eddie. This is Connie Burton.
Hey, honey, how's it going?
Welcome.
Oh, well, I want to tell you this. First of all, congratulations to people who's moving with the assumption that they're going to have some power. But if you're paying attention to the city council, Bill Carson had been the vice chair of under Orlando Gould when he was the chairman of the CRA. And what they did, and someone that has been strongly advocating for East Tampa, dealing with disparities as it relates to conditions of working class people. And so what the board did was made a decision that they don't want to make systematic changes. And so now Joe Cicco have a second bite at the apple, and we'll see what happens from that. But what I'm calling really about is the disgust and disappointment that I always hear out of Gabriel's mouth. I don't know what race, nationality his mother is on his mother.
Now you're being racist now. You're talking about my family. That's just racist.
And I am, because you're always talking
That's good.
about our people.
Confession's
You're
good.
always talking about our people with a disgust and a hate. Because if you know anything about history, the 13 colonies has advanced itself in ways in which we're no longer 13, but we have expanded. So the people in D.C. said they want taxation with some representation, so why not? You don't live in D.C. And what you always eschewing is that when we do have black representation, the control of a government, that everywhere you find black life, we catching the same kind of hell. But what you contributed to is black people being so unknowledgeable that we can't solve our own problems. I can tell you this, mister, that when we didn't have other people interfering in our lives, we had way more advancement. And what you do every Saturday, that I don't never hear you calling on if you Hispanic, a part of the Mexican culture, whatever you is, your focus is tearing down black folks. And I want to let you know that I said to you on the radio, to your face, that you're disgusting in all of your comments toward African Americans. You don't do no lifting.
Well, ma'am, I appreciate your opinions.
Your thing is constantly to tear down and to break down as the proud Republicans that you are. Thank you so much, Eddie. Have a good day.
Thank you, Connie.
So again, she's allowed to her opinion.
Right.
She can give opinion all day long. The fact she doesn't want to see any different, that's her choice. We can't change people. They got to make that on their own.
We got another caller. Caller, welcome to Porch Talk Radio on this Saturday afternoon. Who are you? Where you calling from? And what say you? Hello? Caller, are they there?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, was I not on?
Yes, you're on.
Go ahead and speak now.
I just spoke a lot about the comments made about DC and their leadership. there's a big divide of the haves and have-not in that area, and despite the area of the country where there are resource blights, those resources have to be taken care of first. So to say that local politicians, the situation is their fault because they're trying to keep the voters dumb. They're trying to keep the people fed and housed and safe. And people that actually have those needs, they're just not able to focus on the state of schools right then if the basic needs are not met. So if you have a voice and you're using this platform, to the best of its capacity, the right thing to do would be to inform listeners on what we can do to be educated overall versus blame. We all know what the problems are. America's been in a weird state in the past few years. We need to unify and focus on preserving our democracy and letting people vote and educating our people on that process so that they can be a part of the decisions that involve housing, involve food, and involve safety. And then they are actually in a situation that they're able to focus on, what's going on in the school system. We can get all of those priorities taken care of when the basics are addressed, and that's just a part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But we do our nation a disservice to continue to promote division and to assign blame. If you care about your community, you should lift your sister and brother. If someone's not educated, then do your part and educate. Cut this whole Democrat, Republican, this person's fault, that person's fault stuff out. We're in danger of losing our democracy and selling out to other countries and just being totally unprepared for attacks that are actually even before us now. It is a patriotic thing to allow your fellow sisters and brothers to vote and to educate them on the voting process so that those other things can be addressed.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. All right, do we have another caller? Yes. Okay. Caller, welcome to Porch Talk Radio. Who are you? Where you calling from? And what say you? Hello?
Eddie, Charles Cooper, how you doing there?
We're doing excellent, sir. How about
Welcome.
yourself?
Good. Thank you for giving that word. You said last week, I was listening to you, you said black people are not valued. They're not valued anymore. Listen here, I ain't in love with Democrat or Republican. I want your partner to know that. I ain't in love with either one. What I do have a problem with, this here. Listen here. Neither one of them parties really doing anything for black people. I believe black people are gonna have to do this thing for themselves. I would really like to see black folks get their own party, their own system, their own party. Okay, you might say that's impossible, but you know something? We pretty much gonna have to do that down the road anyway and get our own. And you said something about it a few years back when the other guy was running for mayor of Tampa. Listen here, you need your own banking system. Let me tell you something. Black folk need some money, just like white folk need some money, and we need a plenty of it. And we need an economic Black Wall Street economic foundation where we can get up out of this rut that we in. Look here, all black folk ain't got good sense, and all white folk ain't got good sense. All Spanish folk ain't got good sense either. But you know something? Listen here, I can drop the race and all that stuff. Listen here. Integration was a curse to black folk. We didn't have to integrate. That's what killed us. Mr. Adams, give me some comment on this. Thank you very much. You keep doing the job you're doing. I think you're doing a good job. And look,
Mr. Coffee.
Mr. Coffee, this is Tom Gatens. First of all, kudos to your commentary. I would make 2 points. I'd hate to think that the black Americans would feel they need their own party. I think what they need to do is focusing on the economic issues that benefit them most. And I think Jack Kemp, back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, pointed this out terrifically. He said what we need to do is have empowerment zones where we, and this is the way we can do this, to lift these desperate communities up, lift them up in a way that benefits them, targets them. What you do is you remove the taxes on those specific areas, and you say, you know what, until your social and economic level gets high enough, we're going to excuse you from the taxes so that you keep more money at home. Back in 2004, we tried to implement a program called personal retirement accounts, which, you know, this mom, this African American nurse who has 4 children and working 2 jobs, she should be able to keep her money and invest it in herself and her family and have it willable. But unfortunately, our system today doesn't allow you to do that. Social Security is not willable. And what it does is it keeps people at the social economic lower scale. What we need is an entrepreneurial mindset for the advancement of people who are in desperate economic circumstances. You're 100% right. I would just end on this point. And this is the one equalizer. For the in perpetuity, forever, with public education, let's reimagine it. Let's use that term that some people are using. Let's reimagine education and fund students rather than institutions.
Oh.
We shouldn't be funding schools. We should be funding students. And every child should have a voucher based on the average amount of money that it targets the education in that community. And that way, these mothers and fathers can place their children in the schools that they want, that are performing well, and that are lifting their children up, educating them in the process, and that's the reward at the end of the day. This is where we should be in America. We should be leading the world in lifting up the poor, because we do it in Africa, we do it in South America, we do it in Europe, we did it with the Marshall Plan in Europe after World War II. We need to do it here in America with enterprise zones, and we need to target education, let the dollars flow through the children.
And one other thing I want to say before we go to the next caller, the 3 smartest kids in the world, I want everybody to hear what I'm saying. The 3 smartest children in the world are black. 2 black girls and a black male. The male is 16, the girl is 8 and 7. They have a higher IQ right now than Albert Einstein, Bill Gates, and 2 or 3 other geniuses that everybody know. And that's from Mensa, the international organization that determines who's a genius and who's not.
Yeah.
And they have done this study. And if you want to see somebody, just Google it. Google the smartest kids in the world, and it's gonna pop up, and it's gonna be 3 black children. So when somebody tell you you're dumb or you're this or you're that, all that, it's still propaganda. It's bull. It's bull crap. So don't believe it just because somebody say it, and don't believe who says it, because all you gotta do is when you want to know something like that, just Google it, and they'll show up and they'll tell you how, where, and they'll show you how smart these kids are.
Eddie, the worst racism in America is low expectations.
That's right.
And there's one part of our society that has low expectations for African Americans, and it's none of the people in this room.
No. Oh, hell no.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
All right, next caller. Caller, welcome to Porch Talk Radio. Who are you? Where you calling from? And what say you? Hello?
Hi there, this is Dr. Davis again. I am a Tampa resident. I'm calling from Georgia today. Forgive me for monopolizing your airways, but I'm just so offended by every kid needing a voucher. We have a public school system, and our public school system is for American children. If we can individualize education, this means that we are perpetuating a system of divide, of haves, have not, educated and non-educated. To be selective with our education does nothing different than keeping African Americans, making it a crime for African Americans to learn back in those Jim Crow and those days of slavery. Education is a key to a brighter future, and that goes for everyone, the kid, the mom, the dad, etc. So if to hand out a voucher to everyone and to promote that as an answer, that's dangerous, that's inappropriate, and that's just a malacy that's going on with
Doctor,
what I'm hearing today. If you can get out and fix your own potholes, if we're going to make everybody responsible for things that should be available to all, then we should also get out and fix our own potholes. We should go and put our own traffic signals up in our neighborhood. But that's not how, local government works. State government is supposed to work. National government is supposed to work. We need to get out of the business of individualizing things that every American needs. And education is one of those things. And charter schools there are benefits, but there should be a rule of exception to it. We should not take away from public education to give to charter schools. There are tons of businesses that can fund those things, but to sow that message.
Doctor, are you familiar with Polly Williams?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Are you familiar with the name Polly Williams?
Polly Williams.
Yeah. So Polly Williams was a representative in a city council member originally in Milwaukee, and she was basically we call her the godmother of the school voucher system. She's since passed away. She was an African American Democrat, and she championed this in the late 80s and early 90s, and gosh, she was a blazer. So let me dispel some of the myths about this that I hope will help inform and educate some in the audience. Number one, a voucher. In Hillsborough County, the average cost of education for a public school student is about $10,000. It's a little bit more, but let's say it's $10,000. If we give a $4,500 voucher, that leaves $5,500 still in the system for Hillsborough County to help fill its gaps and holes and to improve the education of those who remain within the public education system. But what it does is it challenges the public schools to perform better, to keep all $10,000 in the system. So in every study, I ask you to go on the internet, look at the academic studies. Even Harvard, probably the most liberal institution in America, has its 3 studies on voucher systems have proven without a shadow of a doubt that they are effective and successful in elevating the quality of education for both the public schools that remain and the private schools and parochial schools that are chosen. This is not a debate in academia, meaning the people who look at these subjects, every study shows that it's successful and it benefits the people, even those who choose not to use it. The final thing I would point out, and this is where it's most important, by targeting it to the minority communities, we can faster reabsorb them into the collective purpose of our society, and that's the strength of educating everybody. Because those who are in inner cities are being left behind because of bad education. And it goes back to the quote I just gave, and that is, when we fund institutions rather than children, we fund bureaucracy that does not educate and is not successful and proves no success anywhere. We don't have a major city that's exceptional at educating its children. That should be the first standard of America, is making sure that our children are the best educated in the world. And to give it one comparison, just to leave it here, we don't like to do this in K-12 education, and our K-12 education is abominable. But in college education, we do this everywhere. That's how we fund college education, and it's still the best in the world because we create a voucher system. That's how it's done in college. Why is it okay for colleges to do this, but public colleges, but not K-12? It's illogical. It's a success formula.
The greatest measure of the success of a program, and I do appreciate your history lesson of the sister in the 80s, but the greatest lesson in the success of an intervention is observation of an outcome. That's how you know if something is successful or not. We are not the most educated nation in the world because we don't focus on the young. If
we agree.
Money into educating our youth, we can have outcomes very similar to what you see in like Korea, for example. And this is when I first learned that lesson. As a part of a cognate in my last education course, I had a teacher that it was political science, but she mentioned when she came here to the United States, she didn't speak a word of English, but she aced our standardized test because in their grade school system, they teach universally, on a very high level. People leave for higher education because in your formative years, that's when you need the lesson. You will never solve a community's problem by removing the person and removing individuals and putting them in a different system. You fix the community. You fix the education system, the public education system, the system that everyone has access
Doctor,
to. Because
I agree with you.
goes back home, no one is going. There's not going to be anyone to help them with their education. They still have to catch a ride to that charter school.
Doctor, up until that point, we
home,
agree.
You don't move. You don't change homes. You fix the problem.
Well, see, the problem is,
You said that the problem is our education.
you gotta look at this whole thing and the brother said something earlier about integration. Before we was integrated, black folks didn't go to the white schools. We still produce doctors, lawyers, engineers, Indian chiefs, chefs, everything else. And we all knew that that was an inferior system. We knew that was an inferior system.
Your comment is absent context. What he said made sense. However, to speak only to that says that, are you saying we need to be segregated again? Absolutely
No,
not.
no,
When you place people in a situation.
But my point is about what you said about the charter schools.
Cannot advance.
The charter schools have been proved nationally to produce better educated black males. If nothing else, that point has been produced by charter schools all over the country. So again,
I challenge you to look at the power. Look at the power of those studies. That means if the conclusions, were based on a sample size that's adequate and diverse enough to generalize those findings to the masses. And not everyone has access to a charter school. And no, we should not take away public education to fund charter schools. Businesses can do that.
Doctor, I would leave it.
Saying, but to say that we should leave public school systems as they are and then criticize those public schools,
Doctor,
this is a system that most have access to, is wrong.
Doctor, let me just make the final point, because I know we need to move on to other topics, but let me just make this final point. In 1982, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a great liberal senator from New York who was serving for the Reagan administration in the Department of Education, had conducted a study. It was called Crisis in America. I forget the name of the study, but it's something about Crisis in America, but it was on education. And this is what he concluded in his executive summary. He said, if a foreign nation hoisted upon the United States the public education system we have today, this is 1982 he's talking, we would consider it an act of war. At some point, we need to recognize that we are failing generation after generation of inner city youth, mostly minorities. We've got to stop doing that, and we've got to re-educate ourselves and say, you know what, by gone, we're going to stop catering to the school unions, and we're going to cater to the child, because that's the most important thing. I think you and I agree on that. And right now, Einstein had said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is insanity. This is insanity. We've got to break this addiction to public education just because it's public education and recognize that the most important thing here is the consumer, which is the child.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the call, and thank you for the conversation. All right, next caller. Caller, welcome to Porch Talk Radio. Who are you? Where you calling from? And what say you? Hello?
Henry, this show's called for again here.
Yes, sir.
Look here, I'm by no means saying that we need to go back to
Segregation.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, look here, it worked for us doing segregation. Right. It worked for us. Now all this charter school thing is more than that. Listen here, in Detroit and all them cities, they took the working skills and the jobs from blacks. In the car factories and all that, they took the job. You know something? And they put dope down there for them to sell and to go to prison with. Now we got to put some of this on the government too. The government was trying to kill us too. Talk to me about it. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, next caller. We got another caller. Caller, welcome to Porch Talk Radio. Who are you? Where you calling from? And what say you? Hello.
This is Brother Willie Dixon from Tampa, Florida.
Yes, sir.
And it looked like you all over different subjects.
That wasn't the intention. That wasn't the intention.
Hey, Brother Eddie, I would appreciate it maybe if we can do a forum with some of these great minds over at the Charles Davis Center, and we can do social distancing, and we can bring some of these great minds together and have a forum. But until then, I heard a lot of things that were said. But first of all, we do live in a racist country. That,
yes.
When you go back to the Constitution,
yes.
They say all men are created equal. They didn't say women or who else, but all men. But it was 10 years later, after the Constitution was written, they came with the Bill of Rights. And the next thing I want to mention is this. When black folks were building pyramids, white folks were still living in caves.
Yes, sir.
And if you look at Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. was was designed by who? Banneker.
Yes.
So we know the greatness of black people. I would, as far as Democrat and Republican Party, I've been both, but I would suggest, and you have the book Unfound Lodge about Reverend Wayne Peterman, and also they should read the book by G. Carter Whitson, Miseducation of the Negro Child. But now what I would like to mention is this. I was in Washington, D.C., and I saw all of the buildings and the crime. And one of my friends was working in the Senate, and I said, man, how is it that all these representatives and senators right here, he said, brother, but they don't live in D.C. They live in Virginia and Alexandria and all other places. So they don't care about it. And if you go to Washington, D.C., I know we were there about 4 or 5 years ago, but mostly it was made up of black people.
Right.
And even when we had the mayor there, who was the mayor for life, we need to have people that would fight for us. And someone was talking about the money following the students. That person should know what FTE is. It's based on the attendance of the students. I know when I was teaching in Sarasota, I was teaching at a school, and I taught at segregated schools and integrated schools. And my brother-in-law, he brought up a good point. We didn't allow, when I was teaching school in Book of Washington in the 50s and the 60s, we would not allow a kid to drop out of school. But now we got the school-to-prison pipeline. And for any little thing that these teachers that don't look like our students, and our kids, they raise their hands and eyes up, and then they're gonna do they're gonna say, well, we need to have a conference. And the next thing, they're kicked out of school. So we need to have more black male teachers within our schools. And another thing, Brother Eddie, we need to get together with, I don't know what you're gonna do about the Juneteenth, but we will be doing our Juneteenth on the 12th of June by Zoom. Last year we had 2,400 people, so this year my daughter is now in it, so we should have more people. But we should realize this too, and I'm jumping all over the subject too. When the enslaved people came from Africa, they didn't just bring people that were swinging on limbs and trees as people see in the Tarzan movie. They brought intelligent people. They brought people that had skills and talents. And we need to know that this country would not be what it is without black people. We have, and another thing I was thinking about, we talking about reparations. During World War II, when they put the Japanese people in these camps, because they were afraid of what they might do, they gave them reparations. What have they done for all the land that they have stolen from black folks? Now the Indian people, they destroyed them, but at least, the governor and the Indians, they came up with a treaty, but they taking money from poor folks. Well, every person that played the lottery and go to the Seminole Bengals, they think they're gonna hit it rich. But when you go to Las Vegas or any place where you have gambling, how can they build these buildings if they wasn't making money?
Well,
so we need to,
Reverend Dixon, we gotta
go back to the beginning.
I did a series like a month ago, and the whole series I think was 2 or 3 weeks on 40 Acres and a Mule, the real story about 40 Acres and a Mule. And I'll do that again in maybe a couple of weeks and bring some of those points up.
Yeah, that's good.
At this point, I think Tom had some things that he needed to say. He's our guest on Porch Talk Radio this weekend, and some of the issues he wants to talk about, we haven't got to. So we're going to give him maybe 5-6 minutes to do some of those things. Then I got to do on this day. Then we got to do Gabriel, and then we got to go. So we only got 15 minutes left in the show. So we're going to try to get some of the show stuff done.
There you go.
And then if we have time, then we'll get to the rest of the callers. So Tom.
No, thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Gabriel. I'll make this pretty brief. I was lucky enough to be selected as executive director for Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse for the state of Florida. And I was really excited because it's an issue that matters a lot to me because I care about the economic outcome of all Floridians. Average Americans. bottom line is, we had a good session. The first bill that the governor signed this session was COVID liability protection, which protects our healthcare providers, protects small businesses in particular, that if you provided adequate and reasonable protections for your customers, you are protected from lawsuits. And the reason this is important is frivolous lawsuits in the state, and we see them on the TV all the time, on radio all the time, that these ambulance chasing type of lawyers, frivolous lawsuits cost the state $5.3 billion, 72,000 jobs every year. And so in our community, your listening audience understands this, because a lot of them are looking for a good job, a good wage job. The problem is, when frivolous lawsuits rule a day, we have less economic activity, and this is important. So this is one of the things we're fighting for. I'm working hard in Tallahassee. That was just a great bill. You are familiar. One bill I was both happy and sad about was the the PIP repeal bill, which we've been trying to fight and get rid of PIP for a long time. Unfortunately, the bill that we had preferred.
Tell them what PIP is.
So every one of us who gets auto insurance is required to have PIP, which was personal injury protection. Now, that had been around since the late 70s, and unfortunately, it caused us to have the worst car insurance programs in the nation, and it was really bad. So the inertia had been to remove it, and they did replace it this session. Now, there is going to be a mandatory bodily injury to protect people and the people involved. Unfortunately, there was a vacancy in this bill. There was a weakness in the bill that may provide for more lawsuits. But here's the concern I have, and this is targeting your audience in particular. One of the weaknesses is it's going to raise the insurance rates for everyone. And it doesn't matter if we're mediocre income folks or high income, but it's going to affect us at mediocre income or low income higher, right? It's going to be a greater portion of our disposable income. So while I like the idea of removing PIP, I wasn't happy about the final bill result. But again, the one champion thing I want to leave with you all is that Florida had been, in our rating system, we did a study, it had been a judicial hellhole, meaning it was the worst for us as consumers in our economy because of frivolous lawsuits. We've improved, particularly because of the COVID liability protection, but most importantly, just know that I'm up there trying to help fight for you guys. If you have any questions, I want to give you my cell number. If you have any questions about these types of bills that are benefiting you, give me a call at 941-725-4450. I'd love to talk to you all and hear some of your stories, because this is what matters. When I go up to the Capitol and fight on your behalf to protect you against the frivolous lawsuits, personal stories of those things that help convince and win the day at the end of the day. But just keep in mind, if we didn't have all these frivolous lawsuits, we would be making at least $5 billion more in our economy, which means it's more money into the state coffers, and it means for all of us better resources, right? Ultimately meaning better jobs.
Very nice.
All right. Okay. So we got a break here. So let me go ahead and get on this day.
On this day.
Let me get the on this day in. On this day, May 8th, 1794. The United States Post Office was established. So the Post Office, which is really not a government, United States of American government official office, it is a private office, run, operated, the whole 9 yards. But it's been around since 1794.
Wow.
On this day, May 8th, 1847, the rubber tire was patented by Robert W. Thompson. On this day, May 8th, 1879, George Seddon applied for the first automobile patent in America. On this date, May 8th, 1914, the U.S. Congress passed a joint resolution that designated the second Sunday in May as Mother's Day.
All right, awesome.
On this date, 1948, U.S. President Eisenhower ordered the National Guard out of Little Rock as Ernest Green became the first black to graduate from a Arkansas public school. We've come a long way, baby.
Long way.
Gabriel.
You know, folks, with all the things I run across, and I do want to thank our callers for calling in, even though they're honest with us, Eddie, and I like that. If they say they're racist and they're calling in, okay. And if they call me racist for calling out what's obvious, okay. I'm good at that. To that, I add, this is something I ran across recently. It says, I will forgive because holding on to the pain and anger of the experience causes me suffering. It doesn't excuse the other. I choose to take responsibility for my healing. Holding a grudge keeps my healing prisoner to the behavior of the other. I will not allow anyone else to have that power over me.
Amen.
There's only one God in heaven that should have that kind of control, and there's plenty of scriptures on forgiving. So just let everybody know right there. You know, and we're going to kind of lighten it up a little bit. Hey, just try this here. It says the wife was out and about, and she pointed out to her husband that was with her, said, look at that guy, that drunk guy over there. The husband said, who is he? Wife said, 10 years ago he proposed to me, and I rejected him. The husband said, oh my God, he's still celebrating. So it's all perspective, folks. It's all perspective on how you look at that. Now we've got some COVID news for everybody. Choosing your COVID-19 vaccine. Facts you should know. Pfizer has a $4.7 billion in fines for false claims, drug and medical equipment safety violations, off-label promotions, corrupt practices, kickbacks, and bribery. Moderna, or just Moderna in general, has never brought a vaccine to market since its founding, despite fielding 9 vaccine candidates, none of which made it through the phase 3 clinical trials. Whatever. Johnson & Johnson, they've been in the news quite a lot lately, named in hundreds of thousands of lawsuits for toxic and or dangerous products, including drugs, shampoos, medical equipment, and asbestos-contaminated baby powder. AstraZeneca has obviously been in the news lately, suspended by 24 European countries due to severe lethal adverse reactions like blood clots. Meanwhile, this tag always goes on all these. COVID-19 vaccines go through many tests for safety and effectiveness and then are monitored closely. That's from the World Health Organization, and they're correct. You are the lab rats. And of course, the main symptoms of COVID-19 fear. These are the main symptoms of COVID-19 fear. Look around you. Lack of thinking. We'll easily give up on human rights. We'll take experimental vaccines. We'll never ask questions. We'll defend narratives based on fear and modeling. Won't research any science, but we'll say, trust the science. Meanwhile, did you know that over 4,000 children have been vaccinated with COVID-19 in the States? And that, out of that, 9 died within 28 days. That's only 2.7 to 2%. That's not much. 7 almost died, and then 3 were permanently disabled. 71 had to see a doctor or were admitted to the hospital or had their stay prolonged. Why is that making the news? Meanwhile, Pfizer is seeking to make an emergency authorization for its COVID-19 vaccine for children between 2 and age 11. Fresh off of CNN's press there. And of course, back in Washington, D.C., you cannot dance. No dancing at weddings, no dancing at all. The Democratic mayor said you cannot dance. If you think this is about caring, you're a bigger fool than you thought. Of course, someone that everybody knows on this planet, someone that never finished college, not an engineer, not a doctor, not an epidemiologist, not a virologist, not elected, owns virus patents, owns vaccine companies, visited the pervert Epstein Island several times. His only qualification is money. Can you say Bill Gates? And that's it for me.
All right, and just so everybody know, Bill Gates is vying to become the biggest landowner in this country next to the federal government.
He's the biggest farmland owner right now in America.
Right now, but he's still buying. So
controlling the food.
Yeah.
But with my day job is a commodities trader for the agricultural industry and dairy industry, and one of the things that he's pushing, and you know this, is he wants to get rid of our addiction to beef. He wants
Fake meat.
He wants fake meat, and which is why he's going to take this land off the farm grid. So he's going to remove this land eventually from the ability to be farmed. That's a scary reality.
Yeah.
But just one thing to your points on COVID-19. I saw this commercial this morning as I was shaving, and it was that Spectrum business commercial that said 99% effective, 99% customer service success, reliability. I'm thinking, wow, Americans have a 99.9% success rate in recovering from COVID. Why don't we talk about that number more? Since it's Spectrum's number one lead that they're so successful, we should be talking about our medical community and saying, hey, there's 99.95% successful in protecting us.
That's not politically correct, sir.
Yeah, and also, and we only got a minute or two, and I need to go ahead and say this. We don't have any callers, do we? Okay, good. That the governor was in Temple Terrace Thursday.
Oh.
He came to the fire station, and he actually signed the bill that's now going to further relax COVID restrictions on the entire state of Florida. So it's a lot of cities, a lot of towns, a lot of different municipalities.
And his bonus.
You know, all.
The bonus.
The bonus for the bonus for first providers, for firefighters and policemen, $1,000 bonus.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
They deserve it.
So again, at the end of the day, it's a lot of folks who dislike the governor, and then there's a lot of people who dislike his politics.
But
I'm going to tell you straight out that Governor Ron DeSantis is probably, if not the smartest, the next to the smartest governor this state of Florida has ever had. He is an intellectual, and he understands not only the policies, he understands what goes into and the arguments behind making a lot of policies. So a lot of folks may be upset with the results of him being the governor, but we would be hard pressed. And there's a lot of states that are suffering. I mean, look at some of the other states that still have the draconian, COVID relief issues, and everybody's still not caught up. I mean, some folks still at home, some folks still in prison. Some of these people been in prison for 2 years since this whole thing started, and they've lost everything. Some businesses that have closed will never open their doors again. Never open their doors again, and they didn't do it. It was forced upon them. It was like we got attacked by Russia or China. Somebody came over and literally, said we're gonna shut down your economy. We're gonna lock all your people up, and in 2 years or 3 years we'll let them come back out. That's not the case here in Florida. Because I'm gonna tell you, it's a lot of folks here in Florida who have not suffered, and I'm gonna be straightforward. They have not lost a day. They have not lost $1 from not working. And part of that is because the state of Florida got a governor that says we're going to do this and we're going to do it with common sense. The politics is everywhere. It just depends on the strength of the person who is in the executive office in your state.
We're lucky.
That's
we're lucky
the
to live.
difference.
The three of us and your producer we're lucky to be living in the free state of Florida.
Hallelujah.
Right, because a lot of states in the United States currently are not free.
A lockdown.
And they saying free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. Well, thank God we didn't have to go through that.
Yes.
So until next week, same bat time, same bat station, when we do all this fun and delightful stuff again, us folks here at Porch Talk Radio say have a good one. And happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there.
God bless America.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.